A police officer loudly berated a pregnant black woman simply because she was in a wheelchair and asked to use the accessible lane. He mocked and insulted her, accusing her of faking her condition just to get special treatment. Terrified by the way his mother was being harassed, her young son immediately called his father, who was in the middle of leading an important city meeting. The moment the woman's husband arrived, the officer realized he had just made a serious mistake. We'd love to know where in the world you are tuning in from. Share your location in the comments before we jump into this powerful story. The sun poured its golden light over Coastal Breeze Amusement Park, turning the winding lines of roller coasters and the glossy carousel horses into shimmering silhouettes. Laughter bubbled in the air, light and carefree, riding on the breeze like music. Cotton candy twirled in eager hands. The scent of funnel cakes and popcorn curled in the warmth. Somewhere distant, a child screamed with delight as a ride launched skyward. It was the kind of day made for memories. Blue skies stretched wide, and joy felt infinite. Amid the vibrant scene, Lila Bennett navigated the cobblestone paths with steady hands on the wheels of her custom wheelchair. She was in her mid-30s, her dark skin glowing under the sun, framed by a soft headscarf and a gentle sheen of summer sweat. Her pregnancy, now in its 7th month, made movement challenging, and complications had demanded she remain off her feet. But Lila, resilient as always, refused to let that slow her down, especially not today. Today was for Jonah, her 8-year-old son, who walked beside her, sometimes skipping ahead, sometimes trailing behind, caught between the pull of childhood wonder and the tether of concern for his mother. He wore a t-shirt with a faded superhero logo and held a park map like a treasure map, circling rides with an excited marker. His energy was electric, bounding toward every sound of laughter and squeal of thrill. Lila smiled as she watched him, her heart lifting with every burst of his laughter. She had promised him this outing for weeks, and although her doctor advised caution, she had insisted. One good day, she had told herself, one day to remind Jonah that his world is still bright, still full of joy. Marcus, her husband, had planned to meet them later. He was busy with an important meeting downtown, one involving state-level legal reform. As the city's mayor, his schedule was always packed. That morning, as he kissed her forehead and helped her into the wheelchair van, Lila had assured him with a smile, "Don't worry about us. Just meet us when you can. I can manage the pass myself." She had meant it. She didn't want to trouble him, not when he already carried so much. He had offered, of course, told her to wait, that he'd come personally to escort her through the gates, but Lila had waved him off, saying it was just a simple task. Besides, she had added, Jonah's too excited to wait. If I make him sit in that lobby for another hour, he'll burst. So here she was, shoulders squared, back straight, determined to give her son a memory worth holding. As they approached the accessible guest services entrance, Lila guided her chair down the smooth, tree-shaded path. This side entrance was away from the dense crowds, offering easier access for guests with mobility needs. A discreet sign marked the turn, with a separate booth tucked near a garden of hydrangeas. Lila reached into her bag, her fingers brushing the neatly arranged folder of documentation, medical notes, pregnancy certifications, and accessibility clearance issued by her OB-GYN. She always carried them, not because she expected trouble, but because trouble had a habit of expecting her. "Mom, do you think we'll make it to the wave swinger before the lines get too long?" Jonah asked, already eyeing the steel arch of the spinning ride visible in the distance. "We'll try, baby," she replied warmly. "Let's get our pass first, then we'll race you there." As the entrance booth came into view, so did the security guard stationed just beside it. He was a heavy-set man in his early 50s, with a thick mustache that curled slightly at the edges and a sunburn spreading across his forehead just under the brim of his park-issued cap. His uniform was neatly pressed but stretched slightly across his chest, and his arms were crossed in a posture that spoke more of control than welcome. His mirrored sunglasses masked his eyes, but the tight line of his mouth and the slight jut of his jaw hinted at a mind already made up, watchful, skeptical, unyielding. The name tag clipped to his chest read, T. Hayes. Lila slowed her wheelchair, studying him for a moment. Something about the stiffness of his stance, the way his gaze seemed fixed on her from beneath those goggles, made her stomach knot with unease. But she pushed that discomfort aside. She wasn't here to cause trouble just to pick up a pass. A simple process, one she'd done before at other parks, one she had every right to. She cleared her throat softly, adjusted the folder in her lap, and rolled forward with practiced composure. "Hi there," Lila began, her voice calm and respectful. "We're here to pick up an accessibility pass. I have documentation with me if needed." Hayes didn't move at first. He stood rigid, a wall of uniform and suspicion, his mirrored sunglasses reflecting the midday sun. Lila sat calmly in her wheelchair, folder still balanced neatly on her lap, Jonah at her side clutching his park map with fading enthusiasm. She had approached respectfully, offered her documentation without delay, spoken with grace and patience. But it was clear from the moment Hayes crossed his arms and tilted his chin that she had already been judged. He looked her over again, then shook his head slowly. "You sure you're not just trying to skip the line?" he said, his voice slow and deliberate. "This entrance is for people who actually need it." Lila blinked, not because she was confused, but because of how fast the atmosphere had changed from summer joy to quiet accusation. "I assure you I do need it," she replied, her voice measured. "As I mentioned, I'm in my 3rd trimester and have been ordered to avoid prolonged walking. I have medical documentation here, signed by my physician." She lifted the folder slightly, an offer of transparency, but Hayes didn't take it. Instead, he gave a dismissive snort, glancing at her wheelchair with undisguised skepticism. "Lady, you don't look that bad to me," he muttered, taking a slow step forward. "We've had people pull this kind of stunt before, rent a wheelchair, roll right through, and suddenly they're sprinting to the front of the line." Lila stiffened. "Excuse me?" Her voice sharpened, though still controlled. "This is not a stunt. I'm here with my son to enjoy the park safely. I didn't ask for special treatment. I'm following the park's own accessibility protocol." Hayes's hand hovered near his utility belt, close to his radio. "A lot of folks follow protocol until they get what they want. Show me a piece of paper and think that's enough." Lila's brows knit. "It is enough. This is official medical clearance." Jonah looked up at her, worried now. "Mom, are we not allowed in?" Lila gave him a gentle squeeze on the shoulder. "We're allowed, sweetheart. Don't worry." But Hayes was already turning away, lifting the radio to his mouth. "Control, this is Gate Officer Hayes. I've got a possible 1062 unauthorized access attempt using disability fraud, requesting supervisor or PD backup for verification." The words hit Lila like ice down her spine. She leaned forward, her voice lower but urgent. "Are you serious right now? I've given you everything required. You're calling the police on a pregnant woman in a wheelchair?" Hayes turned back, his mouth twisted into something like a smirk. "Don't make this difficult, ma'am. Just wait here. If you've got nothing to hide, then no problem, right?" Lila's stomach twisted. She could feel people watching now, families walking past, a few slowing down as they caught the tension in the air. A couple of teens whispered nearby. One woman actually stopped, eyes narrowing as she took in the scene. The warmth of the summer day felt suddenly oppressive. "This is outrageous," Lila said, her voice trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the rising burn of disbelief. "I came here with full compliance. You haven't even verified my documents. You're escalating this for no reason." Hayes shrugged. "Ma'am, this is a public safety issue. If you're not faking like you say, then sit tight. Nothing to worry about." Lila bit her lip, glancing at Jonah, who was now gripping the wheelchair arm. She had come here to make the day easier, not draw attention, not cause disruption, and definitely not to become the center of an unnecessary confrontation. And yet somehow, doing everything right still wasn't enough, still wasn't believed. She sat upright, pressing a hand lightly to her belly, steadying her breathing. "Fine," she said at last, her tone like steel under velvet. "We'll wait. But I want the name of your supervisor. And when my husband finds out about this, oh, we'll get to him." Hayes cut in, smirking again. "What's he going to do, file a complaint?" Lila looked him straight in the eye. "He's the mayor of the city," she said softly. And for the first time, something flickered in Hayes's eyes, uncertainty, maybe, or disbelief. But before he could respond, the radio crackled back with confirmation. A uniformed officer was en route. Lila exhaled slowly. She hadn't wanted to cause a scene. She hadn't wanted to bother Marcus. But now the scene was choosing her, and she wasn't backing down. The sound of sirens cut through the hum of the amusement park, subtle at first, then louder, until it pierced the summer air with a sharpness that drew eyes and murmurs. Lila sat motionless, her back straight, hands calmly resting on the arms of her wheelchair. Jonah was curled close to her side now, his small hand gripping her wrist, his earlier excitement long gone. Officer Hayes stepped away from them, posture tall and self-assured, as a patrol car pulled up just beyond the main gate. A young, lean officer in a freshly pressed uniform stepped out, sunglasses perched on the brim of his cap. The name stitched into his chest read Officer J. Tate. He adjusted his belt and strode over, eyes sweeping across the gathered onlookers, the woman in the chair, the boy, and finally Hayes. "What's the situation?" Tate asked, voice low and clipped. Hayes jerked his thumb toward Lila. "Possible. 1062. Claimed disability access without valid justification. Refused to vacate the priority entrance. Said her paperwork's real, but I wasn't convinced." Tate nodded, gaze shifting to Lila. He approached her slowly, hands on his belt, a faint shadow of skepticism already in his brow. "Ma'am," he said, "you mind explaining what's going on here?" Lila's tone was steady, but her chest rose and fell faster than before. "There's nothing to explain. I'm here with my son. I'm pregnant and under medical instruction to avoid walking long distances." I presented documentation to the park officer, and instead of reviewing it, he accused me of fraud and called the police. Tate tilted his head slightly, the corner of his lip twitching into something close to disbelief. "That true?" he said almost casually. "You got the documents?" Lila held up the folder. "Right here." He took it, opened it briefly, scanned the contents without really reading, shut it after 3 seconds, and handed it back. "You know," he said, "it's pretty easy to get a doctor to sign off on stuff nowadays." Lila's grip on the folder tightened. "Excuse me. I mean no offense," Tate continued, tone nonchalant but sharp. "You seem fine to me. Sitting here, no brace, no cast, no visible issue. Just seems like maybe you're exaggerating to get some special treatment." The words hit her like cold steel. "I'm 7.5 months pregnant," she replied, her voice icy now. "I don't need to wear a cast to qualify for reasonable accommodation. What I need is to not be accused of lying in front of my son." Tate's eyebrows arched. "You're getting defensive." I asked a question. Lila looked directly at him. "Because you came here with a conclusion already made." Hayes chuckled behind him. "Told you," he muttered. The tension in the air thickened, like a storm cloud ready to break. Several passers-by had stopped completely now, watching. A couple of phones were up, recording silently from a distance. Tate leaned in slightly. "Then I'm going to need you to move. You're obstructing the entrance." Lila's mouth parted. "Obstructing? I'm parked where I'm supposed to be. You're refusing a lawful order," Tate said, voice sharper. "I'll give you one more chance." And before she could respond, he reached behind her, grabbed the handles of her wheelchair, and jerked the chair backward. The motion was fast and violent enough to jolt Lila's whole body. She gasped sharply, her hand flying to her belly. Jonah screamed, stumbling backward in shock, nearly dropping his map. "Stop!" Lila shouted, her voice cracking as her body trembled. "I'm pregnant." "What are you doing?" The crowd reacted instantly. "Yo, what the hell?" someone shouted. "She said she was pregnant," another voice called. A phone was now recording clearly. The moment had changed. The balance had been broken. Tate froze for a second, the crowd's reaction breaking his narrow vision. He let go of the chair, raising his hands slightly in a gesture of reluctant neutrality. "Ma'am, calm down," he said, suddenly more cautious. "There's no need to escalate this." Lila stared at him, her chest heaving, one hand still clutching her stomach protectively. "You escalated this," she hissed. "You grabbed me. You touched my chair in front of my child." Jonah had rushed toward her, crying softly into her side, his arms wrapped tightly around her waist. I didn't do anything wrong," Lila whispered, more to herself than to anyone else, as the police voice rang out again, sharp and contemptuous. Jonah stood silently beside her wheelchair, his small hands shaking. He had seen it all, the way the guard talked to his mother as if she were lying, the way the police treated her as if she were nothing. His heart pounded. He remembered what his father had always said: "If anything goes wrong and I'm not there, you call me, no matter what." So, As the police turned to leave, Jonah took a few steps back, pulled out the small phone Marcus had given him, and quickly dialed a number labeled Dad. He didn't say much, just whispered, "They're hurting, Mom. Please come here." The crowd grew larger, the whispers growing louder. A woman stepped closer, holding out her phone. She told me she was pregnant. "It's over," the woman said. "It's assault." Officer Tate looked around, suddenly aware of how many eyes were on him. Hayes shifted uncomfortably. Then someone whispered Lila's name. She turned slowly, her face still pale. A sleek black SUV pulled up outside the park entrance. The door opened, and a man stepped out, wearing a navy suit, his polished shoes clicking on the pavement. People turned. Conversation stopped. His presence alone was enough to draw attention. Marcus Bennett, mayor of the city. The first guard to stop Lila froze when he saw him, recognized his presence, but it was too late. Marcus's eyes scanned the scene and locked on Lila, still in the wheelchair, panting. His gaze shifted to Jonah, standing near her feet, trying to look brave. Then he looked at the policeman, his hand still hovering menacingly near his waist. Marcus moved, with controlled fury. "What exactly is going on here?" he asked, his voice soft but warning. "Because from what I can see, my wife is shaking in her wheelchair, clutching her stomach, while two uniformed men stand over her as if she were some kind of threat." Everyone at the scene was stunned, unable to believe that the woman was the mayor's wife. Officer Tate stammered, "Sir, there's a mistake. We don't know who she is." Marcus's jaw clenched. "So her identity determines whether or not she's treated as a human being." Hayes blurted out. "She refused to comply. She showed you her papers. You ignored them." "She was aggressive. She was assertive," Marcus corrected, "because you were contemptuous, then violent. I have dozens of witnesses live. You have disgraced yourself." The crowd murmured louder. Some applauded. A woman shouted, "Tell them, Mr. Bennett." Lila looked up at him. "They made Jonah cry," she said softly. "They touched me. They treated me like I didn't matter." Marcus turned to her, his eyes softening. He touched her shoulder lightly, then looked down at the son clinging to her. "It's okay," he whispered to Jonah. "I have you." Then he spoke to Tate and Hayes, his voice as sharp as steel. "You are both relieved of duty. Security will escort you off the premises, effective immediately. But you can't. I can, and I will." Just then, the official park security team arrived, two supervisors, both wide-eyed as they took in the crowd, the cameras, and Marcus's presence. They didn't need an explanation. They moved in to flank Tate and Hayes. The crowd erupted into cheers, phones raised higher. One chant began Lila, Lila, and quickly caught on. It wasn't just support, it was vindication. Lila, though overwhelmed, sat up straighter. She exhaled, slow and deliberate. The pain was ebbing not just from her body, but from her spirit. Marcus leaned down beside her. "You still okay?" "I will be," she said, now that everyone saw it. He nodded, then stood tall again, facing the crowd, the officers, the cameras. "This," he said, his voice firm, "will not be swept under the rug." And with that, the tide fully turned. By the time the sun began to dip below the tops of the roller coasters, casting long golden shadows across the pavement, the story had already taken flight. Within an hour, the incident had gone viral. Dozens of videos uploaded from park guests had flooded social media, some shaky, others crystal clear, but they all showed the same thing: a black pregnant woman in a wheelchair being harassed, grabbed, humiliated, and then fiercely protected by her husband, a man whose authority carried more than weight, it carried power and accountability. The hashtags trended fast. Hashtag Justice at Lila, hashtag Marcus Bennett, hashtag Sunridge Incident. Local news outlets scrambled for statements. National outlets picked it up before midnight. Footage was replayed on every platform, anchors wide-eyed, analysts stunned. For many, it was yet another story in a long line of unnecessary escalations. But this time, it involved someone with the means and the will to fight back in public view. By the next morning, the Sunridge administration released an official statement. "We are deeply disturbed by the treatment of Miss S. Lila Bennett during her visit to our park. We take responsibility for the failure of our staff and contracted law enforcement to uphold the values of dignity, inclusion, and safety. Effective immediately, Officers Tate and Hayes have been terminated from all duties on Sunridge grounds. A full internal review has been launched in coordination with civil rights authorities. Marcus didn't wait for apologies. He called for a meeting with the park's board of directors the next morning. No assistants, no suit and tie PR buffer, just him, a binder of evidence, and his calm fury. "I've worked for years to make this park a place of joy," he said, voice firm and composed. But joy means nothing if it isn't extended to everyone. What happened yesterday wasn't just a PR failure, it was a breach of human decency, and you will not bury it under press releases. The board agreed unanimously. A public press conference would be held, not a quiet apology tucked in a blog post, but a full commitment, live, accountable, and binding. Later that afternoon, in front of a wall of cameras and reporters, Marcus stepped to the podium. His presence was magnetic, the room silent before he even spoke. Lila sat nearby, Jonah beside her, holding her hand. She looked tired but radiant, no longer cornered, no longer silenced. Marcus looked out over the crowd. "Yesterday," he began, "my wife came here to pick up a priority pass, something she was fully entitled to, for a day at the park with our son. She was met with suspicion. She was dismissed. She was grabbed and accused, not because she was aggressive, not because she was lying, but because someone decided, based on how she looked, that she didn't belong." His voice grew firmer, not louder, but heavier with each word. "We live in a country where we're told that things are better, that we've come far. But it only takes a moment, one uniform, one unchecked assumption, one badge unearned to strip someone of dignity." He paused, let that hang in the air. "And the terrifying part," he added, "if she hadn't been married to me, this story might have ended in silence. But I'm here to make sure it doesn't." Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras clicked like gunfire. Marcus continued, outlining sweeping changes to Sunridge Grove's training protocols. Every officer, security guard, and park employee would now undergo mandatory civil rights training. A new oversight board would be formed with community voices included. Guest services would expand its ADA program, including digital pre-verification, to prevent such confrontations. And perhaps most importantly, he announced the launch of a new internal hotline, anonymous, 24/7 for guests and employees alike, to report bias, misconduct, or abuse. "The fight against discrimination," he said, "doesn't end in press conferences. It begins with systems, and those systems must answer to the people they serve." The crowd applauded not just politely, but with genuine fervor. Later that evening, Lila stood by the kitchen window at home, sipping warm tea. Her body still carried tension, her breath uneven, but the glow of the rallying support had begun to ease the weight. Marcus entered quietly and wrapped his arms around her from behind. "You were incredible today," she murmured. He kissed her temple. "No, we were." Behind them, the television played a replay of the press conference. Jonah sat cross-legged on the rug, watching his dad speak on the screen. His eyes shone not with confusion or fear this time, but with pride. They had weathered the storm. They had turned trauma into truth. Now the world was watching, and no one would look away. In the days that followed, the story refused to fade. It leapt from television segments to online editorials, from hashtags to roundtable debates. News anchors dissected every frame of the footage the moment Lila was grabbed, the flash of fear in her eyes, Marcus stepping in with his badge held high, the crowd that refused to look away. It was no longer just a viral video. It had become a litmus test for the country's ongoing conversation about authority, race, and belonging in public spaces. Major outlets like CNN and MSNBC aired full-length interviews with Lila and Marcus. She sat poised, honest, her words measured yet deeply emotional. "I wasn't trying to cause a scene," she said during one appearance. "I just wanted to enjoy the park with my son. But in that moment, I wasn't seen as a mother or as someone in need. I was treated like I was lying, and it nearly broke me." Her voice trembled, but her gaze remained steady. The public responded with a groundswell of support. Letters poured in from across the country, parents, veterans, nurses, teachers, people who had experienced similar moments of being questioned, dismissed, or mistreated. Some recounted stories decades old, memories long buried but suddenly resurfacing after seeing Lila's calm courage and Marcus's fierce stand. At the same time, the consequences for those responsible began to take shape. Officer Tate, the one who first laid hands on Lila, issued a short public apology through his attorney, claiming a misunderstanding, but it rang hollow. Tate and Officer Hayes had been officially terminated, not just from Sunridge Grove, but from active law enforcement roles, pending investigation into civil rights violations. In online forums, Tate's name trended for all the wrong reasons. Former co-workers came forward anonymously to describe a pattern of aggression in his conduct. One even admitted, "I'm not surprised. I just wish it hadn't taken someone like Marcus Bennett stepping in for it to matter." The park's contracted security firm, Central Guard Solutions, announced a full restructuring. The CEO released a statement acknowledging severe lapses in judgment and pledged to re-evaluate their hiring and training protocols. Lawsuits were rumored, sponsors began to pull back. The ripple effects had only just begun. And then came the editorial think pieces, The Cost of Not Belonging, The Next 10 Years, America, Dignity in a Wheelchair, Why Lila's Story Matters, The New York Times, Power Met Privilege, and Lost Rolling Stone. Each piece explored a different facet of the incident, but they all landed on the same truth. This wasn't just about a woman in a wheelchair being denied entry. It was about the rot that still lingered in places meant for joy, and how the right people at the right moment could expose it. For Lila, the aftermath was more complicated. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.